Hey, what is up guys? This is Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and today we are building a console challenger. No, it won't completely blow consoles away, but at a good price, this computer will get your foot in the PC gaming door, and it gives you an upgrade path. So, let's hop right to it. Okay guys, let's go ahead and get started with this console. I'm going to call it a console challenger build. Now, I do want to go over why I call this a console challenger and not a console killer. And that is simply because this build is not designed to be the end-all be-all of PC gaming. This build will get you in the door of PC gaming. Now, it is not a perfect build, and feel free to leave suggestions, comments, all that kind of thing in the comments below, because that's why I'm here. I always want to hear what types of adjustments you guys would make. This is a computer that I would build if I was a PC gamer or trying to get into PC gaming and on a pretty tight budget, and it does offer some upgradability down the road, which is something that I always try to keep in mind when I'm doing these types of builds. So I will leave the PC part picker link in the description down below if you want to replicate this build or see exactly what parts I picked out. And it is worth noting that I kept the price tag below that $400 mark, although that's including all the mail-in rebates and that sort of thing, so your price mileage will likely vary if you decide to go with something similar to this. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right into it. The case, I wanted to keep it a micro ATX build because when I think of a console challenger even, I think of something that is relatively small. So I went with the Rosewill FBM 05, and I've just had good luck with Rosewill before as far as some of their small form factor cases go. No, they're not always easy to build in. It's not exactly a friendly enclosure all the time, and for mounting our SSD, you may even need to get a little bit creative with how you do that. But one of the things I do like is that it has these optical bays. This one has 2 slots, some of them only have 1. But the reason I like those is if you have a non-modular power supply, which we have a modular one, so that'll help us. But if you have a non-modular one, you can always tuck those cables right up there, unless you're using them, obviously. But that's always a great place to just stuff some extra cables in case you don't need them. As far as our SSD goes, I doubt it has any 2.5-inch drive bays or drive slots for us, so we'll probably have to just do something creative, like, I don't know, get some double-sided tape and just stick it right on there. It'll be fine. It's an SSD. It doesn't have moving parts anyways. Okay, so that's just sort of the aesthetic, and again, you can sort of adjust this however you want. Things I like about it is it has the USB 3.0 port on the front, and I'll sort of zoom in on that. It's right here in the corner. And also has a couple other front panel connectivity, including a couple USB 2.0 ports and obviously your audio. I like the aesthetic. It's pretty understated, and also it's extremely cheap at right now $30 flat. So you can't really argue with $30 for a case. Case is one of those things where as long as it's compatible with the motherboard, you should be pretty good. Following that line of thinking, we are going with a 430 watt power supply, mainly because we don't need a ton of juice for this particular rig. I believe the PC part picker, I believe if we click edit, it tells us that we have roughly 234 watts there, so we have way more than enough wattage. This will give us upgradability for a better graphics card down the road, or things like extra mass storage, like maybe a 1 terabyte hard drive if you want to add that later on down the road. So it's a great power supply. I've used this power supply and its cousins before. I like the modularity of it, which will help with cable management in a tight case. It doesn't have a ton of expandability there, but again, we don't really need it in this particular build. So this power supply will do us just fine. Now we get into the brains of the operation. And this is why I picked the FX 6300. This is balancing plenty of cores. We've got 6 cores here with price. Now, if you bump it up to an 8320, which again you can do, that's going to run you an extra $20, $25 depending on where you get your processor, but it'll give you those 2 extra cores. My personal rig, one of my personal rigs, my living room PC currently runs an 8350. I find that to be just great. And you can always push up the clock speed, especially if you buy an aftermarket cooler for this thing. Again, these are those little incremental upgrades that you can make with this build, which I like. But if you give yourself a better cooling solution, you will obviously be able to get higher clock speeds out of this particular chip. So it's a great starting low-end PC gaming processor, and that's why I went with it there. Paired up with that is an ASRock board, which I've never had great luck with ASRock boards. That's probably just the luck of the draw, but I was looking for Micro ATX AM3 Plus boards, and frankly, there aren't a ton out there. This is one that I could find, but it should give you everything you really do need. So we have plenty of SATA connectors, looks like 6 of those there. There's not a ton else we need. So we need a board to house the chipset and all that, or the processor, the graphics card, that sort of thing, and this will do us just fine. It's a motherboard, should work, should be just fine for this build. The real guts of the project are coming in the form of a graphics card here, and this is the one that I picked out. Again, keeping budget in mind, this is a great low entry card, and that would be the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 750 Ti. It's starting to get a little bit long in the tooth as far as the newer games. I was looking at some benchmarks though. This card does play Dark Souls. It is the bottom end of the recommended system requirements for Dark Souls 3. So it is quick enough to run that game. No, you will not be maxing out your settings, but as long as you're not playing on like a 4K TV or a 1440 monitor or something like that, as long as you're playing on a normal resolution, and being that this is a console challenger, again, I assume that we're probably playing on a living room TV, maybe a bedroom TV, something like that. This card will get you pretty good graphics and will probably beat most consoles as far as graphic candy. I say that because a lot of the games that run on consoles nowadays, thinking of Dark Souls for example, I believe it runs at 720p, maybe 900p on the Xbox One and PS4. So those get downscaled as far as their resolutions go. This card should be able to run it at 1080p on mid-ish settings, or if you bump it down to 900p, I saw that it would run it on those medium, high settings at over 40, 50-ish frames per second. So this card gets you in the door is basically what I'm trying to get at here. It's not perfect, but it gets you in the PC gaming door, and because you're not spending a ton of money on it, you could always sell it later and upgrade to something a little bit more beefier down the road, like maybe a 960. If you can pack away enough money for it. So, good upgradability. Another example of a part that you're not completely overspending for. For storage, and this is where I truly believe that PCs are just dominant. And by the way, you can replace your console storage with something like this. It's easy for a PS4 to do that, not so much for an Xbox One, but the beauty of PCs is that you can start with something like this, a 240 gig SSD, which price per gigabyte is about as good as it gets at that 240 mark. 120 gigs are really expensive, and then you don't get much benefit from scaling up from the 240, so I always recommend starting with a 240 gig SSD. But this will give you plenty of room for several games, and then when you hit a point where you need more storage, you can either add another one of these, or you can get a mass storage drive like a 1 terabyte hard drive and add that to your rig, and then you have even more storage. But also, this will give you great performance in boot times, just a typical everyday task opening programs, that sort of thing, which is why I love SSDs as a boot drive at least. On the RAM side of things, we pick up whatever's cheap. I threw in a 2-stick 8 gigabyte set of RAM, and you'll notice that this motherboard, by the way, has 4 DIMM slots, so you could add additional slots. So I would start with this 8, and then if you feel like you want or need 16 gigabytes of RAM later on, I mean, it's another $30, get the same matching set again, add those in, no problem there. But this will get you started. 8 gigs is typically good enough, especially for the type of gaming that we're going to do and light use we're doing. We're not trying to blow the doors off of anyone with this computer. This is an entry rig, and 8 gigs will be perfect and offers an upgrade path that way as well. So this is your basic, or very, very basic, I might add, entry-level gaming PC, if you will. Has an FX 6300, has a 750 Ti graphics card, gets you a great start in the PC market. This particular build gives you a little bit of an upgrade path as well. Unfortunately, it is based on a dead socket. AMD is typically a little bit better than Intel, and by a little bit, I do mean a lot bit. AMD is better than Intel at letting you use the same socket for a couple generations of processor. AM3 Plus is definitely dead. I believe the new socket that Zen is going to be on is probably AM4. Now that being said, the 8350, if that's an upgrade route you want to go, the 8350 can pop right into this motherboard. You'd be set to go. But do know that if you upgrade the processor down the road, you will have to completely replace your motherboard because it won't have compatibility at that point. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the console challenger build from May 2016,
which if you don't know, you just saw that,
go ahead and give this video a like down below. That's right down there. Also, the subscribe button's right beside it or right near it. You should go ahead and hit that while you're at it. Also, I am always on Twitter @HoosierHardware. Until the next video, I will see you guys later.